Hi guys, is it better?
Hi.
Hi Dima, can you hear me?
Yes, it's fine now.
Okay, cool. I just forgot that my headphones were actually connected, so I just needed to turn that.
All right
Yeah.
then. Okay.
Okay, cool. Then we'll get started.
All right.
Okay. Let me just share my screen. Okay, I think there. Okay, everyone should be able to see my screen now. So please let me know if you can't, because then that's a problem. Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. Thanks again for joining us for our 5th session. Time is flying so fast. I can't believe we're already on our 5th session, but yeah, here we are. And I hope that these sessions, you guys have been finding them very useful, and that you are actually going back after the sessions during your week and, you know, revising your notes from the sessions and trying to apply the things that we are discussing in these sessions to your readings, to your assignment prep and so forth, and even in other modules. Remember, what I keep saying is we really want to be able to apply these skills to over a broad spectrum and not only in this particular module. So for those who are maybe new or who haven't been with us in a while, just want to remind you that to please keep your cameras off and mics muted. If you do want to, of course, participate and ask a question or comment, then you are more than welcome to just use the hand feature, the hand icon. Then I will see that you want to say something, then you can unmute yourself after I recognize you, sorry. Or you can just type it in the chat, and the chat is open, of course, throughout the whole session. So whenever something comes to mind, you can always just pop it in there and I will either read it out and I will address it. Another thing is we have started with our one-on-one consultations. So if you are struggling with something or there's a particular thing that you want us to discuss, then you're more than welcome to schedule a one-on-one consultation with me. And yes, I think that's it. Just for the attendance register, just a reminder to, I wonder if I can copy this. Just a reminder to fill out the attendance register. Thanks, Dima. Dima has posted it in the chat. So please fill that in before we even start. And then, of course, at the end, as you guys know, there is the evaluation form. And yeah, I'd want you guys to fill that out as well. So if there are no questions, I think we'll just get started. Okay, so maybe just a recap for those who weren't here last week, and for those who were here, just to refresh our memories. Last week we talked about text analysis. We looked at what it is and why it is important, especially in our reading and writing tasks. And we also said that it is not only important for our academics, you know, it is a skill that is required across our life. And in different contexts. So we delved a bit into that. Then we also, sorry, I'm a bit out of breath. And then we talked about the text analysis process and just sort of went through this process step by step, just as a guide really on how we can approach text that we are given and how we can really dig deep into the text and try to really get the crux of it, get that deeper meaning out of whatever we read. Yeah, and then we also did a practice exercise, and a few people started like leaving when we started doing the practice exercise. So I hope you guys won't leave closer to the end because there are some exercises, and I want us to see the value in the exercises because these are not like talk shops, they're workshops. So, you know, usually the point is then we are presented with some information or theories, and then we practice them, that we get better by doing. And I'm always going to stress this. I think if at the end of the semester there's one thing you remember from me, is she's always saying we need to practice, we learn by doing, right? So that's why I think those practice sessions are so important. So please don't run out when it's time to do those. Okay. So today we're actually going to just talk a bit about critical thinking and how to go about analyzing, critically analyzing. Okay, I see a question there. I think Dima can answer that. It is on the My Life website, I think. The recordings are posted there. Yes, so we're going to look at how we can go about critically analyzing the text, and And, last week we just talked about text analysis in general. Today, I really want us to look at how do we critically think about what we are reading? What are the things that we can look out for to ensure that we really got the full gist of the text that we're reading? And another maybe very important note that I want to bring out is that this today will be our final session sort of on more general topics. Thanks, Ndima. So today will be the last session on general topics in terms of like essay writing and general literacy skills, literacy facilitation skills. I think once we have gotten through these few sessions, I'm hoping and believing that we are all a bit better equipped to handle the reading and writing and comprehension part of our studies. And now I want us from next week to move into really using everything that we've now talked about and applying it to our to our module content. So we will be doing a breakdown of every unit week by week. So there are 10 units in our study guide for RSC 2601. Then we're going to have 10 sessions on each unit. And I think I must just stress that it's not going to be lectures on the units, but just like an overview of the unit. And what I really, really will ask you guys is that you don't come to the session empty-handed. Please come to the session having read the unit so that we can now start really practicing what we've been talking about in the previous sessions about really testing if we understand. And this is also maybe a nice time to start, making those summaries. Remember what I said when we talked about summaries, it's great for exam prep. You're already starting your exam prep when you start doing your summaries. So I'm challenging you guys to, if you've not read through your study unit, your study guides yet, to maybe then take this opportunity to work through it with me. So week by week, you have, so every week, focus on one unit, right? You focus on one unit every week, and then we'll come to the session, we give an overview, we break down, and we try to apply our summarizing skills and our reading comprehension on that particular module. I think that is really going to help us, and really going to help us in the long term. So yeah, that was just an announcement from me. That's what we'll be doing from next week onwards. Are there any questions about that? Okay, I don't see any questions, so I'm going to assume that everyone is happy with it and are looking forward to our next few sessions. It's also a good time for you to come through with questions that you have on specific theories or just specific content that you maybe read and you went through on your own in your own time and you didn't quite, get the gist of it. I will then use the opportunity or the space to try to shed some more light on those topics, and we'll do it in this platform so that if there are other students who've had the same question or who have been struggling with the same thing, then we all benefit from that explanation and we work through it together. So that's what we'll be doing from next week onwards. So are there any questions? All right. If there are no questions, I just ask that you please keep the mics muted. Thank you. So Yeah, as part of our sort of our series in comprehension and analyzing of text and reading critically, we need to start thinking about as part of our analysis. You know, there are two parts to it. So the first part is thinking about our content, which I suppose seems very straightforward. But it is something I think that we take for granted, is that when you're reading, to ensure that you are analyzing at the level of content, think about your content. So look at things like the claims, the evidence that is when you're reading, right? You're looking at what are the claims that the writer is making. What is this writer saying actually? What evidence have they put forth to support the claims, and does the evidence make sense? So that's a nice way to critically assess what you're reading. So it's not just you read it and you take the writer's word for it, because the writer is also human. So when we are called to critically read something, we are called to really analyze and dig a little bit deeper, and see the writer as just another human being who can make mistakes and can have maybe can make incorrect claims. So then we have to go in as the reader and start sort of analyzing it at that level. So the Tolman method is a really good tool that is used to analyze content at this level. I'm not going to go too much into the Tolman method because I don't really think it is relevant for this particular session or for our module. But if you are interested in it, especially if you do a lot of essay writing, I'd recommend that you actually go up and read about it, because it could really help even in the way that you structure your essays. Because remember, everything that we want analyze as we read, the skills that we pick up when we're reading, we're able to apply when we write. So it's a two-way method. Yes, so we are really, when we're talking about, thinking about content, the Tolman method then was developed really as a tool to analyze content, the content of a written piece or the content of an argument. So using the different concepts, we're able to, or it helps us to examine an argument by thinking about, like I said, what claim is being made, what evidence is being used to support that claim, and if the evidence makes sense, or what warrants behind that evidence, or what makes the evidence relevant. Right. So that is really just, I think, at the basics of it all. And then we move on to thinking rhetorically. And this is, I suppose, a second level to analyzing a written text, is then at the level of rhetorical thinking. And at this part, yeah, so for some of you who are in your other modules, if you are writing essays, and perhaps I want to frame it in that way, that as we talk through these things, yes, we're talking about it in the case of when we are engaging with text, as in we're reading our study guides or books or articles, but also think about it at the same time as you as a writer, because as students, we are not just consumers of information, we are also called to be producers of information. So this works both ways. So your lecturer might even ask you to, write a formal analysis essay. And so what a rhetorical analysis then does is it goes in and it digs in and explores the strategies and the writing style of a particular piece of content or a particular text. So the rhetorical analysis can be tricky because the chances are, you haven't done one before, and you might struggle at the beginning, but really it's quite simple. There are a number of things that you're basically looking out for as you are conducting a rhetorical analysis. And those things are audience, purpose, style of voice, ethos, pathos, and logos. So audience, purpose, and style we talked about already, right? We talked about it in our previous session as one of the things that we look at when we are analyzing text. But here I also want us, like I said, think about when you are writing, are you keeping these things in mind? So we're gonna go through each of these. I'm not gonna spend too much time on the first three because, like I said, we know it already. But it's really important as we like engaging with text to think about the decisions that the author has made, you know, during this writing process, and whether these decisions are effective or ineffective. And you have actually I want to say the liberty, but yes, you have the right as the consumer of that content to actually criticize. Criticize sounds negative, but to criticize and say, has the author made an effective choice here? Like, does this actually add to the message that he or she is trying to bring across? So we're going to talk about these points real quickly, and especially with the last three, because they are new to us, we're going to delve a little bit more deeper and also work through some examples to see how it actually comes to play in our text, not only our academic text, but even the text that we create with our like social media posts and all types of writing. Okay, so the first one is audience, like I said, and like we know, before you start writing or as you're reading, it's important to think about the audience, right? So your audience would have an impact, a big impact on the writing. So you should think about, if you're the one writing a written piece, you think about your audience, because if you want to be effective, you must consider your audience's needs and expectations. It's important to remember that the audience has an influence on both what and how you write. And we talked about this in last week's session. If you do remember, we said if you're writing for primary school learners, it's going to look very different to if you're writing for your lecturer to mark, even if it's the same topic, right? So it affects both what and how you write. So most research papers or most assignments will be written with an academic audience in mind. For example, you would be writing for your lecturers. And it's usually quite difficult sometimes to do this because you might, when you're not an academic yourself, it's difficult to know what exactly, you know, is your lecturer looking for when they're marking your assignment. Like, is there a rubric? Sometimes, most times, there is no rubric. So it can be a bit confusing to know what the lecturer wants. But I think this is one of those things that come with experience and as you get more feedback. And I think I'd also encourage you, as when you do your assignments, to not just, it shouldn't just be a for your eyes only thing. Like, go to, if you have access to, you know, lectures for consultation, use those. So, you know, use the tutors, use whoever, even in your immediate circle, who is in academia, to maybe just read through what you've written and see if it works for that audience. Yes, but it is important to obviously think about who the audience is and how they will react to the message and how you need to adapt your writing accordingly. Right? I'm not seeing any questions, so I'm going to swiftly move along. Okay, so yeah, I've said here that good writers try to see their writing through the eyes of the audience. So it's not just about, oh, I've put down my points. Think about your audience and think about how will they actually receive what I've written. Is this word going to maybe be a trigger for someone? And if it is, you know, then you change it. So it's really about also having that empathy for your audience. Okay, and the next one, as we have also delved into, is purpose. So purpose really is about making decisions as a writer about why you're writing, and what you want your audience to take from your work. So it's important to remember that voice is relative to audience and purpose. And voice is the next thing that we're going to talk about, but this shouldn't be too strange for you guys at this point, because we have discussed voice as well. So yeah, the purpose, of course, most of the times, why do we write an assignment? Because our lecturers asked us to write an assignment, and it's part of the assessment for a module, and we need to pass the module, so we're going to write the assignment. So I think it's important to maybe move away from this idea that, oh, the only purpose of me writing this thing is so I can get a mark, because yeah, then it does affect the way that you end up writing it, and the tone and the voice that you use, and also just the effort that you put into it. But we'll get into that in the next slide. So there are 3 objectives you may have when writing a research paper or just any essay. The first one is to inform. So when you're writing a paper to inform, you're not making an argument, right? You're not here to say, I believe that the people who steal, armed robbers, should get life sentences, and then you're putting all your facts. That's not what an essay to inform or an assignment to inform is for. It's just about stressing the importance of the topic. You're basically just telling people this is the status quo, this is what's happening on ground. So you're giving basically a snapshot of a particular situation or of a particular topic. So if they ask you what is the state of education in South Africa, and you think the purpose of your paper is, your research paper is just to inform people, then you're just going to say, this is what's happening in South Africa. This is what the primary school system looks like. This is what the high school system looks like. This is what the tertiary system looks like. You're just informing, right? You might think about your purpose also in this case then as educating. So if someone who was from America maybe came here and asked you about South Africa's education system, you're basically just telling them what it looks like, right? So you're basically you're educating them on a matter. You're not saying, oh, actually it's really bad. This. Like, that's not what an assignment to inform is for. It's not for you to put your point across. That happens in the next step, where it's to persuade. So in the next objective, if your research paper is to persuade people, then it's you taking a position on a particular topic, like the previous example that I used. So you will say, this is what's happening in South Africa. This is how I feel about it. But of course, in a more academic and more formal way. So then you'll develop a thesis statement that makes a clear statement, or a clear assertion about some aspects of your topic. So you will basically be, it's kind of that, are you for or against something? So you will basically build your case for or against something. And that's, if you're writing to persuade someone. And we also see this in our writings on social media. Sometimes you're just writing a post to inform. So, I went to the post office and they were closed even though they said they were going to be open, right? You're just basically informing everyone. So if someone else wanted to go to the post office, they would know, okay, actually they're closed. But if you're writing to persuade people that Aramax is much better than using the post office, then you're going to write that post in a different way. The third objective is to analyze, and here is where you basically make an analysis. I guess that is straightforward. So you're not focusing on informing someone or telling them what's happening or persuading them or bringing your point across, but really just to analyze. So if that topic again is the South African education system, and you're asked to analyze, and this is, I think, what you'd probably get the most in some of your other modules if you are doing writing modules, or you will in third year, then you want to basically gather as much information about the particular topic. So you'll you'll do research on the South African education system, and then you put together your conclusions based on research, right? So you read through it all, you see, oh, where are the similarities, where are the differences, and then you basically put out that analysis on that particular topic, right? Okay, I hope so. I hope that is clear. If there are any questions, like I say, please just pop them in the chat. Okay, so how do we go about, just a few tips on how to think about your purpose. I actually just touched on the first one, is to move beyond the idea that you're writing that you're writing your research paper only because your prof or your lecturer asks you to write it, and then to also decide why you're engaging in the research process, and why you're writing a paper. Like, what do you want? Especially, maybe this is once we get to, because in this module we're introduced to research, and then I'm assuming in third year you'd be actually conducting research. So, think about what you want your research to do, or what you want your writing to do, what purpose you want it to have, and then, use that as you write. Yes, I think that's it. And then the next one is voice. Again, just gonna maybe go through it very quickly. The voice is, once you've considered, right, who your audience is, and you've established your purpose, it's now time to think about your voice, or the writing style that you're going to use. So your voice in writing is essentially how you sound to your audience, right? And when we think about how do you project voice over paper, because it's not like you can the reader can hear what you've written, but your voice is really just the words that you use, the way that you've structured your paper. It's basically, as the person is reading it, what kind of image can they put together of you? What voice comes out? Is it a very casual voice? Is it a very authoritative voice? Is it a very formal voice? So that will come out through your writing, but it shouldn't be something that you just write, right? I think most times we write the way that we speak, and that's not a bad thing. But if you're writing on a particular topic for a particular purpose, for a particular audience, you need to tailor your voice or your style accordingly, right? So I can't just like I wouldn't speak to my manager the way I speak to my little brother. I wouldn't write an academic paper the way I write on WhatsApp. You see, so already we're doing this all the time. We're tailoring our voice according to the audience and the purpose of it. Even with maybe your friend, there are times where the topic is very serious. Maybe your friend did something wrong, and you're really upset with the voice that you're going to use, even in that WhatsApp message, is going to be very different from when you are celebrating something, or sharing information about whatever's trending on Twitter, or having a discussion about that. So because of the topic, your voice changes, or your tone changes. The voice you decide to use will then have a great impact on your audience. I remember there was one article that I read that said that people are finding it offensive when someone puts a full stop at the end of a WhatsApp message, because the way that the other person is interpreting it is like, oh, what did I do? Why is this person angry with me? Why is there a full stop? Like, if I say okay and I put a full stop, then the other person thinks that something is wrong, because that full stop now suddenly it's like, what's going on? So yeah, it's small things that affect your voice. So I can just say okay, and I send it, and my friend will be like, okay, fine. But then now if I say okay and put a full stop, she's gonna think I'm mad at her about something. So very interesting stuff. So there are two types of voices that we do have, and we are probably most familiar with. The first one is formal. And so when we're using a formal voice, it's more like academic or it's professional. And you want to, of course, avoid things like slangs or cliches, like in your essay, writing something like, oh, the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree. You know, that's a very casual thing to say unless you are analyzing a poem or something that has that, right? Otherwise, it's too casual to put in an academic essay. Or you want to avoid also conversational tone, and also contractions, cliches and contractions. Usually, it's not good practice to write can't. To just have contractions in your essays. Rather, write the foreword out. Write cannot instead of won't. Write will not. You know, just things like that. It does contribute to the voice because on she can't, the student can't go home because whatever, is very different from the students could not go home because, or cannot, you know, go home. So it just sounds a little bit different. So of course you want to think about your academic audience. You want to think about, okay, this is my lecturer that was going to read this, so you know I need to basically tailor my voice appropriately because I want to leave the impression that I am able to write for academia, and I'm able to write academic papers. And then we have semi-formal. I didn't go into informal because I think that is quite straightforward. So semi-formal, a semi-formal tone is, so it's not quite formal, but it's also not like informal. You know, you still don't want to use slang or cliches, but with this semi-formal tone, you can use contractions, you know, but and you can use the tone can be a little bit more conversational, but still not informal. I don't think there's a space for informal writing in academic writing unless you have been particularly asked to write an informal or like a reflective piece. Otherwise, it is best to just keep it formal or semi-formal. So yeah, usually when we make errors with voice, it does impact the essay because again, your reader can't see you, so the voice that comes out through your writing is the perception that they're gonna have of you. Yeah, and another thing that students usually make a mistake of is losing their voice. So it is important to maintain your original voice, because what happens is, especially when we are writing an article or a paper, an essay where we are referencing, right? We put so much references, so we cite so much of other people, other authors, that you end up not, like, your voice doesn't come through, and then it's just like, it just feels like, okay, you've now just listed a bunch of what everyone else has said, a bunch of other voices, and your voice has not come through. So it's important to try to balance your voice as the writer with the voices of all the other people that you are citing. Yes. So now we move on to some of the more newer things. Right. So we want to look at ethos, pathos, and logos, which forms part of the modes of persuasion. So what are modes of persuasion? They are basically the ways that, again, like I said, remember when I said that as we write, we're always wanting to do something. And a lot of the times, especially with social writing, we're wanting to persuade someone of something, right? So Aristotle, which was a Greek philosopher, he was a Greek philosopher. He basically came up with these theories of these modes of persuasions that basically talks about the different ways that writing can appeal to the human nature. And when we talk about writing here, I want us to think very broadly. Text very broadly, you know, it could be advertisements, it can be lectures, it can be political rallies, anything, any discourse, right? So any discourse basically tries to appeal to some part of of human nature, and they are used, like I said, every day in all types of writing, in all types of media, to basically try to connect with people. So a lot of times when we're writing, we want to connect with people. So basically we want to connect with people at various levels, and that's what we're going to talk about. The three levels then are ethos, pathos, logos. And if you're basically in your writing, if you have all of these things, it makes for a well-rounded, well-developed argument, or a well-developed case that your audience will find credible. So if that's not very clear, I want us to watch a very short video. It's about 3 minutes long that just gives a nice overview of it, and then I will go in and discuss it a bit further, just so that we really understand. Sorry, let me just get this out. Okay, must please let me know once you can see and hear. Okay.
Get a real-time bird's eye view of your projects. Create project.
Can we all see and hear the video? Okay, perfect.
January 2007. Joshua Bell, one of the greatest violinists in the world, played to a packed audience at Boston's stately Symphony Hall of 1,000 people, where most seats went for more than $100. He was used to full sellout shows. He was at the peak of his abilities and fame. 3 days later, Joshua Bell played to an audience of nobody. Well, maybe 6 people paused for a moment, and one child stopped for a while, looking as if he understood that something special was happening. Joshua said of the experience, "It was a strange feeling that people were actually ignoring me." Joshua Bell was playing violin in a subway station. At a music hall, I'll get upset if someone coughs or someone's cell phone goes off. But here, my expectations quickly diminished. I was oddly grateful when somebody threw in $1. What changed? Same music, on the same violin, played with the same passion, and by the same man. Why did people listen and then not listen? Aristotle would be able to explain. What does it take to persuade people? 2,300 years ago, Aristotle wrote the single most important work on persuasion, rhetoric, the 3 means of persuasion: logos, ethos, and pathos. Logos is that the idea makes sense from the audience's point of view. This is usually different from the speaker's point of view, so work needs to be done to make the idea relevant to the worldview, the pains and the challenges of the listeners. A good argument is like good music. Good music follows some rules of composition. Good arguments follow some rules of logic. It makes sense to the audience. Ethos is reputation. What are you known for? Credibility. Do you look and act professional, trustworthy? Are your motives clear? Do you show the listener that you care about them as much as yourself? Authority is confidence plus a concise message and clear, strong voice. Pathos is the emotional connection. Stories are an effective human tool for creating an emotional connection. There are moments where an audience is not ready to hear the message. A speaker must create the right emotional environment for their message. What changed? Why did people travel for miles to hear him play one night and not even pause for a moment to listen the next morning? The answer is that ethos and pathos were missing. Ethos. The fact that the great concert hall hosts Joshua's concert transfers its trust to Joshua. We trust the institution. We now trust Joshua. The subway does not have our trust for musical talent. We do not expect to find great art, great music, or great ideas. So it confers no trust to Joshua. Pathos. The concert hall is designed for an emotional bond between an audience and an artist. The subway platform is not. The hustle and movement and stress is just not conducive to the emotional connection needed between performer and listener. Logos, ethos, pathos. The idea is nothing without the rest. This is what Joshua Bell learned on that cold January day in 2007. If you have a great idea, how do you build credibility and emotional connection?
Sorry, I was talking to myself and I was on mute. Are there any questions on the video? Just any initial questions or something that didn't really come together for you? Just so that as we discuss it, I know what to stress on. Okay. It's very quiet, but okay, well, I'm going to move on. As the discussion opens up, please feel free to pop a comment in the chat box. Thanks, Nicole. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Thanks, Amy. All right. So ethos really, as the video said, is about using credibility, right? So either you use credibility, your own credibility as a writer, or the credibility of your sources in order to persuade. So really, essentially, ethos is about believability. Will your audience believe what you're writing? Do they believe what you're saying? And what can you do to ensure that they do believe what you're saying? So two ways that, like I said, that we can do it is using your own credibility. For example, if you have experience in a particular field, say you're a teacher, right? And you've been a teacher for 10 years. You write an essay about the education system in South Africa. Your experience gives you credibility because someone reading it will say, well, I think I can believe what this person is saying because they've been in this field for 10 years. It makes sense that they would know what they're talking about. I think I can believe it. But if you are a student, like, you're a second year student and you want to write about the issues that lecturers face, in the university system, someone reading it will be, if they know who you are as the writer, your article might not have credibility because someone's going to think, well, what does a student know, a second year student know about what lecturers face. You know, you don't have that experience. So how can you know what you're talking about? And this is where the other way of building credibility comes in, where you can then cite. And this is why referencing and citations is so important in our academic writing, because it gives what we're saying credibility. It's telling the person who's reading it that this is not just my words, this is not just something I thought up. This person said it, you know, this researcher said it, this professor said it, or this scientist said this. So that's why we cite. We cite, of course, to back up what we're saying with a more authoritative voice, or a more well-known voice. So Aristotle basically said that ethos is one of the most powerful modes of persuasion. And I think even if you think about outside of the academic space, right? If you see, who's a good example? Barack Obama talking about the political climate, you know, you won't really you won't think to yourself, oh, I can't believe what he's saying. You know, you're instantly you might not agree with what he says or his views, but you won't think that he doesn't know what he's talking about. You'll be like, oh no, he's a politician. He's been in the game. Of course, like, he's a well-known name in politics. So if he's going to talk about politics, of course, you know, it's credible. Of course, we can believe it. So even though I don't have experience in politics, if I can quote Barack Obama, then that gives my paper some sort of credibility, you see. So this is why referencing and citing is so important, especially because as students, we haven't yet built the name ourselves, except if you're writing about a field that you have been in. So how do we basically, so how do we build, or what are some strategies that we can use to build credibility in our writing? And this even in your social spaces. I think if you know, these days we're all having debates on social media. If I don't have, what I like to do is, if I don't have a like credibility in a specific area, for example, I want to talk about the unequal like pay gaps, the gender pay gap, right? I want to talk about it, but I don't have that much experience. I haven't been working for that long. I haven't really been in a lot of companies. So I don't really have that experience, but I feel passionate about this thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to quote people who, you know, I will say, oh, maybe I have friends who have been working for a long time, who can speak on this. Then I will say, oh, you know, my friend who did this is said this, or, you know, obviously I will quote researchers in the field. So some of these strategies are, I've probably now mentioned them. Like I said, the first one, if you have experience, you can always bring that in. So the interesting thing is, if it's an academic paper and you are writing about the education landscape, you're a teacher, now where it comes to where you must balance is it's a formal writing. So you can't say, oh, when I was a teacher, or you can't say, oh, I'm a teacher, I've been a teacher for 10 years, so, you know, this is what I see. You can't write that in your academic paper, but you still want to find a way to bring your experience in to show the writer that you know what you're talking about. So a nice way to do this usually is maybe like in your conclusion, and say something along the lines of, from extensive experience in the field, the writer, which is now yourself, has found that. So that's a way to show people that, oh, this person actually has experience in this thing. So, you know, we know what to talk about. And not just in the conclusion, even in the introduction, maybe even at that point. Actually, yes, at the introduction, because you want to set the tone already, that as the person starts reading, that they know that the person who's written on this knows what they're talking about, that they can believe everything that you're going to be writing because you have experience. But you just need to find a way to integrate that experience in a way that is fitting for the context and for the audience that you are writing for. right? And that's when we talk about, yes. So then if you don't have experience, as I said again, that's when you will now cite, right? So for example, I think I'm going to use that same example. You're writing about education. Now you haven't been a teacher for too long, but you have read a lot of Professor Jonathan Jansen's work. He's been in the education space for a long time. So then you can quote him. You can say, well, according to Professor Jonathan Jansen, this is what's happening in the education system. So that then validates, basically backs up what you're saying. So it's not just your words. And I think something important to note is that just because you know that the person you're quoting is credible doesn't mean that your audience will know. Of course, like your lecturer, if they gave you that assignment, they should know who Professor Jonathan Jansen is. So yes, so it's a good thing to do is to, in your writing, actually include the credentials of that person that you're citing, especially if your argument is based on like one person's writing or research. You don't have to write the whole bio. Professor Jansen was the. You just say, according to Professor Jonathan Jansen, who is the Dean of Education at Stellenbosch University in South Africa, the South African education system, ... So just in those few words, you've stated this person, you've given some insight. So if someone who didn't know Professor Jonathan Jansen, they'll see, oh, he's the Dean of Education at like Stellenbosch. Oh, that means something, right? So that already adds credibility. Then you can, continue with your argument. And that way you've already convinced the reader that what you're writing is credible. Yes, and then we talked about, you use the tone of voice that is appropriate for the writing situation. And this is where also you need to use I stress the importance of using that formal academic and professional voice, because it makes you sound academic and professional, and it adds to your credibility. And then, yeah, we need to provide a good balance when it comes to pathos and logos, but I think that will be clear as we actually discuss the other two. And then finally is to avoid flaws in logic. So even though you are citing all these brilliant people and you're talking about your experience, your arguments must still be, or the claims that you're making must still make sense, otherwise you fall into logical fallacies. And logical fallacies are errors in reasoning that are based on poor or faulty logic. So if you're going to make things like blanket statements, like say South Africa's education system is terrible across the board, then that's a very blanket statement. And someone who maybe had a good experience in the education system will be like, well, are you sure? Like, have you looked at all the schools? Have you, so the minute someone starts questioning your writing, you're in trouble, right? So avoiding blanket statements is a good thing. Avoiding arguments that just like logically are faulty. And I think, I don't know what like a really good example would be, but something where you just make a conclusion based on one thing. That's a logical fallacy. It's better to focus on that specific thing and say, oh, education system, particularly in certain communities, particularly in this community, has, is bad or is lacking, then that's a bit more credible, because then we can think, okay, you've probably done the research on that community. If there are 5 schools in that community, it's easy to have, gotten the data and all that stuff. Yeah. So that's ethos. It's all about credibility, making sure that people believe what you are writing. I see a question. Nicole, so we should trust all previous scientific research. Not necessarily trust it, but we can trust it in the sense that if it is published and it is published in the a peer-reviewed a journal or a book, then we can trust that it is credible, yes. It doesn't mean that we need to agree with everything, but we can, of course, critique and say, no, I don't think we don't think that they explored all of the options. You can critique, but I don't think you can argue that, oh, they are not trustworthy. Yeah. Most of the cases, if they are published in peer-reviewed books or journals, then they are trustworthy, yes. I hope that answers your question. All right, the next thing is pathos. So pathos is really about appealing to the emotions of people, of your audience. And this, we see it all the time. We see it in the news. We see it in adverts. Just everywhere, which people are trying to appeal to the emotions of people, because we know that humans are easily moved by their emotions. So this makes pathos a very powerful mode of persuasion. If you're writing and you're able to appeal to the emotions of the person who's reading, then you're on the right track. So when you think about appealing to pathos, you're considering all the potential emotions that people experience. Most of the times we will see people appealing to sympathy, or anger, or fear. Those are the big ones. If you think about the report on COVID-19, a lot of the writing and a lot of the reports appeal to our sense of fear, right? So they're telling us, stay home, do this. Oh, so many people are dying. So it's just all this kinds of messages and framings, that the way that the messages are being put out, that appeal to our fear. So I will not, leave my house, because I'm now going to think the minute I go outside, I'm going to catch this thing. I mean, not really, but yes, it's just about, appealing to the emotion. So we mostly see people appealing to these things, even if with a clicks advert, there was the appeal to anger. So the way it was framed, the way the people were speaking about it, the way the reporters reported on it, really was appealing to anger of people. But there are so many more emotions, and it's important to also try to delve into it according to context. You can also use like humor or joy or frustration to try to convince an audience of your argument. So the important thing is here that we need to be careful, especially in academic writing. Yes, there is a place for pathos. There is a place to appeal to the reader's emotions, but the focus mustn't be too much on the emotions, because then it reduces the credibility of the writing, especially in academia, even if you're having a debate with someone, right, and you're really passionate and you're getting really emotional about something. You might actually be making sense. You might be giving good facts and good statistics, but if you're very emotional about it, the person's going to be like, they're going to start questioning your credibility just because of you're appealing too much to the emotions. So there needs to basically be a balance, because you don't want someone to walk away and thinking, oh, that person was too emotional, and then the focus goes off what you are actually saying, which is a very sound argument, to how you are acting or how you were saying things. So yeah, it's a very delicate balance to maintain. So yes, like I said, we see a lot of commercials usually do appeal to our pathos. If you think about do you feel good, look good, if you want to lose weight and have that perfect body, or you want to have this car, then it's so that people can, just things that are going to make you either feel good or want to feel good. So they basically appeal to our pathos for those things. Okay, so how do we appeal to pathos, or what are the strategies that we can use to build our argument? And this is when you're writing, mostly when you're writing, The first thing is to think about the possible emotions that are related to the topic in order and to use those effectively. So for example, if you're calling for change in animal abuse laws, right? You want to appeal to your audience sense of sympathy, possibly by providing examples of animal cruelty. So very important topic. And you're like, how do I convince people that this thing is serious? Now you're like, okay, I can appeal to their sense of sympathy. So you show pictures of, animals being tortured or hurt, and a human being, even if they're not a big animal person, will instantly feel like, oh, it will make them stop and think and like, oh, that's terrible. So that is how you can appeal to the pathos. And of course, in our writing, of course, we're not like, putting pictures in your essays, but you can paint a picture with your words, right? When you talk about the violence in a particular community and how, teenage pregnancy is so high, children are not finishing school, there's gangsters on every corner. You paint this picture, and the person reading it will have some sort of emotional reaction. So you can paint on that to make your case. So once you're like, okay, this is the picture I've painted, and now this is why I think government needs to do this, or whatever action you want taken to persuade your audience of something. So yes, that's why I said, like, in an effort to appeal to pathos, examples are usually very good, because someone can see this picture in their mind and it will instantly trigger an emotional reaction. So again, I did say in academic arguments, you need to try to balance pathos with logos, and logos is what we're going to go to next, is the logical aspect. It can't just be emotional. And when presenting evidence based on emotion, try to also maintain an even tone of voice. Again, in that example of, this community that is in such bad shape, because the picture that you're painting is already appealing to pathos, there's no need for your tone to also now be, oh, these poor children, oh, the destitute, oh, this, you don't now need to add words that are going to make the reader feel even like worse. Already just painting the picture should be enough. But once you go into really trying to dig into the emotion of the reader, and then you kind of lose your credibility, because now it's like the person like, okay, this, like, I get it, it's too much, like you're doing too much. So yeah, balance is important in that case. I see. Okay, I thought it was a question. All right, and then finally is logos. So logos is about appealing to your audience's logical side, and this is the one you really want to focus on, especially in your writing. The other two, of course, very important. They all are very important, but at the core of it all, you want everything that you write to be logical, that it must make sense, right? So you have to think about what makes sense to your audience and use that as you build your argument, or as you write your paper or your paragraph. So as writers, we appeal to logos by presenting a line of reasoning in our argument that is logical and clear. So here you want to use that evidence. You use evidence, you use statistics, you use facts, and that's what's gonna make your readers say, okay, no, this makes sense. Like you want your reader to have a this makes sense moment. So in order to develop strong appeal to logos, you need to basically avoid faulty logic. And we talked about this, the faulty logic just being that this does not make sense. So once it doesn't make sense, then you lose both ethos, which is credibility, and you lose logos. So appeals to logos is an important part, especially in academic writing, but we also see it in commercials. Mostly commercials will use pathos and ethos, actually, but they sometimes will also use logos. For example, you know, the car insurance adverts. So they'll say, you know, OutSurance, switch to OutSurance. We will give you, you know, 500, our premium is 500 Rand less, which will save you so much money in 12 months that you can use to do whatever. So at the logos level, at the logical level, you will think about it and you're like, yeah, actually that makes sense. If I pay 500 Rand less, I'm gonna save so much at the end of the day. Then I can do this with that kind of money. Then you start thinking about, oh, what kind of money, what kind of things I can do with the money. So, you know, at that point, it's like, it makes sense. So they also appeal to logos. I just see a question here. I think, Amy, when we talked about it last week, about the assignment, I think the majority, people said that we must just move on, if I'm not mistaken. And so I said that we can maybe discuss the assignment in a small group, like in a consultation. So if you, yeah, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but that's what that's the note that I made, that we would then have. Okay, so maybe if you can book a one-on-one consultation, or if there are other students that do want to discuss assignment 2, then, you know, then we can have a small group discussion around that. But we won't be covering it in this session, unfortunately. Sorry. Okay. Yeah, because I think people did want us to just move on. Okay. So how do we, what are the strategies we can use to appeal to logos? The first is that both our experience and our material or the citations can provide evidence to appeal to logos. So yes, of course, evidence in that, you know, once you get stats, once you get the fact of something, that is appealing to the logos. Another thing is to just remember your audience. So just because something makes sense in your mind doesn't mean that it makes sense to your audience, right? So this is why it's so important. I think this, in all your writing, please take note in all your writing to walk your audience through, or walk the reader through your logic. Because you might say, townships are dangerous. And the person reading it is going to start questioning, how did you come to that conclusion? You know, what makes you say that? In your mind, you're like, you have read about it, you've read the stats, but now in your writing, you're just saying townships are dangerous, you know? So you've not taken your audience through, or you've not taken the reader through your reasoning or your thinking. So they're going to start questioning you, like, how do you just come up with such a statement? So once you add facts to it, once you add statistics to it, you say, you know, and I mean, you can't actually say townships are dangerous, because that is a blanket statement and that is logical error. But you can say maybe 90% of townships in Cape Town are dangerous. And then, you know, you give the facts and you say, based on this, then the reader will be able to see, oh, that makes sense. Oh, I see why you said that. So you need to basically take your reader through your position or through your reasoning. And then, yeah, be sure to just maintain clear lines of reasoning. I said that. And then again, when you're presenting an argument based on logos, it is important to avoid being too emotional. You want to bring some pathos depending on the purpose. Remember, the purpose of your writing, but you still want to maintain an even tone of voice. And I think that's the key thing with your academic writing, just ensuring that it's a key, that you're maintaining an even tone of voice and that you're maintaining a professional and academic tone of voice. All right, just see any questions here. Okay. Yeah. So someone's joined us and okay. Sorry about that. So moving on. Yes, so now I've done a lot of talking. I want us to maybe allow some of what I've said to really like get in, or what's the word, like marinate. And then let's try to actually identify this for ourselves. So we watched the video and explained it, and I've tried to explain it now to the best of my capabilities. I want us to identify. So we're going to watch, sorry, go back. So we're going to watch 3 very short videos. And what I want you guys to please put in the chat as we watch each video is what mode of persuasion is being appealed to in these videos. So is it ethos, or logos? So yes, I'm gonna just watch this quickly. All right, so the first one. So I just want to line them all up so that we don't have to go back and forth. Right, so just bearing in mind what we've discussed between the 3 modes of persuasion, I want you guys to please just put in the chat as we watch what mode of persuasion you think we are appealing to in each video. So this is the first one.
When it comes to safety, Prius buyers don't have to compromise. It offers many of the same safety features found on other Toyota vehicles. The available vehicle stability control system controls the engine output and brakes when the car is turning to help the driver maintain control. Anti-lock brakes, electronic brake force distribution, and brake assist are all standard. Prius also comes standard with a direct tire pressure monitor system. Sensors in each wheel transmit pressure information to a control unit inside the car. A warning light on the instrument panel illuminates if it detects a tire that is seriously underinflated. Dual front airbags activate in certain types of frontal collisions to help protect front seat passengers. These advanced airbags feature dual stage deployment and a front occupant classification system. They can deploy with lower pressure in less severe collisions and higher pressure in more severe collisions. The airbag deployment level is also determined partly by whether the seat occupant is wearing a seatbelt or not. A front occupant classification system disables the passenger airbag when the right front seat sensor detects a lower range of weight or no passenger at all. Standard front seat side airbags and side curtain airbags help offer protection in certain types of side impacts. For more information on Prius's safety technology and how it works, be sure to check out the basic and advanced technology chapters.
Okay. So we've got some answers in the chat. Nicole and Claire both say logos. Is there anyone else that wants to? What do you guys think? Thank you for those answers, ladies. Anyone else? Right, so Sandy, I see you've posted there. Thank you. Yes, so logos is correct. Yes, so Claire says logos because the video appealed to logic by use of evidence and factual information. Exactly. So it's telling us the fact of the car, right? It's telling us this is what the car has. These are the features. This is what it can do. So it's appealing to the logos primarily, yes. Interesting, Sandy says that it could also be appealing to the ethos, both logos and ethos, and I completely see that because people know, right, that Toyota is a very trustworthy car, a very trustworthy brand. I mean, yeah, it is a car brand. So yes, it could also be appealing to the ethos, but the one that comes out the strongest is logos. But I think someone who just sees the ad will be like, oh, it's Toyota. We believe that Toyota is a very safe car. So yes, thank you for that. Let us just check the next one. It's a bit shorter. Okay.
Your secret to shine. Because every woman has her secret. Secret Potion, the new fragrance by Christina Aguilera.
Okay. What are we thinking? I'm seeing pathos. Can we hear why? Or what makes you say pathos? Shall we watch it again? All right, I see that. Appealing to the emotions to want to be beautiful, yeah. Speaking directly to the audience. I'm seeing a lot of pathos. Smelling like her, yeah. So that's smelling like her, but so smelling like Christina Aguilera, right? And she's quite a big name here. So it is appealing to our pathos, yes, but mostly I think the use of Christina Aguilera, they're using her to sell, yes, they're using her to sell this product because she's, as Claire said, a credible public figure, right? So we see right off the bat as the ad starts, we see her name. We see her name. We see her name right at the end. Again, we're seeing her. I mean, just on this shot, her name is 3 times here on screen, on the bottle, on the box. So they're saying, I mean, appealing to our emotions definitely, but using this public figure. So the first one is using ethos, and then pathos would be secondary. So because we would want to look like this public figure. If this was just a regular, I don't know, like Stacy from down the road, it wouldn't really mean much to us. They're like, who's this girl? Like, why would I be interested in buying this thing, right? So we don't know what Christina Aguilera smells like, but we want to smell like her because she's Christina Aguilera, right? So that's a strong appeal to ethos. Okay, and then the final one, let's just play this ad, right?
Just go back to your chicken wing pose right now.
Sorry. Okay.
and lots of light.
I don't understand. Did I do something wrong? Are you breaking up with me?
Slow and steady.
Trans, the official sudden anti-spectacles. Maddie.
What are we thinking? See the chat. Pathos. Yeah, can you tell us why? It is correct, but yeah, we must know why. What emotions? I'm gonna keep pushing here. What emotions do we see coming out there? All right, thanks, Sandy. Anyone else? No one else? Okay, so yes, definitely pathos. Definitely appealing to our emotions, and there's multiple emotions just in that one ad. You know, it's of course the connection, the connection with the dog after an emotional situation, right? We've all, maybe not all, but we know how, you know, that feeling of being at the end of a relationship. We saw there someone was being broken up with. We all know the feeling of, you know, when you first start driving, there's that fear. We saw the girl, you know, driving for the first time. You know, and so all those emotions, and it's like, okay, the dog was there with her through all of that. So it's a deep appeal to the emotion there. So yeah, thank you. Thanks for that. So of course that is in video form, but most of the times we're not going to come across videos in our courses, right? In our modules. So let's see it in a text form and try to determine what modes of persuasion is strongest here. So remember, in any given text, there can be more than one modes of persuasion. The important thing, or what we're looking for here, is which one is strongest. So question 1, a student wants to convince her audience about the problems associated with climate change and shows images of polar bears who have died from exhaustion trying to swim to the next chunk of ice. Which mode of persuasion is strongest here? Pathos there, exactly, right? Showing those dying animals is obviously going to make people feel very, have appeal to emotions of sympathy, and yeah. Perfect. Question 2, a student wants to convince his audience to take a stand against standardized testing in schools. He uses his own experience as a student, but also cites experts from the field of educational research, including a researcher with a doctorate in educational psychology. Which mode of persuasion is strongest here? Ethos, exactly. So he's trying to make a very strong case here, and he's saying, listen, I'm a student, and this is what I've experienced as a student about these tests, but don't just take my word for it. Here are all these experts who have said the same thing. Here's a guy with a doctorate in educational psychology who said the same thing, or, you know, whose research is in line with what I'm proposing. So surely my argument is credible here. Surely I have, you know, a strong case here. So he's definitely appealing to the ethos there. Cool, thank you. Thank you for those answers. And then a final check. So I want us to see how this is used in a piece of text or writing. So I want us to just quickly see how we can use these modes of persuasion to analyze, because that's what really it's all about, like analyzing text, right? It's still forming part of our series on text analysis. So how do we go about analyzing text in these modes of persuasion? Let me just. Exactly. Advertising appeals to our emotions to trick us into buying. So all the videos were appealing to emotion to get us to buy the products. Yeah, they were all appealing to emotions, definitely. I think it's just that, like, the levels to which they were doing it, or what was coming out strongest. But most adverts, as we do know, as you've rightfully said, Nicole, most adverts are just appealing to our emotions. You know, they want us to feel something so that we can buy. They want us to feel that we need a particular thing so that we can buy. But it's not just adverts, remember, it's just all types of text. Social media posts nowadays, you know, there's the online activism. Those are also, they also appeal to our emotions, you know, very strongly. And sometimes we don't need to realize, it. So I want us to just see how this guy has actually analyzed a piece of writing. He goes through it quite fast, so I'm going to ask you to maybe just like really pay attention and see how he's able to extract these three modes of persuasion from a written text. Okay.
To help us learn more about how to appeal to ethos, pathos, and logos in our own writing, my professor assigned us an article to read and then asked us to locate the appeals to ethos, pathos, and logos the author used. She assigned us an article called The Height Gap. In the article, the author explains that the average American is getting shorter while people in other countries, ones with better healthcare and diet, are getting taller. The topic feels a little controversial, and I can see how the author carefully makes this case using all three ethical appeals really well. Right away, I noticed an appeal to pathos. When the author introduces his expert, John Komlos, he gives the reader some background designed to help the audience make an emotional connection to this man. In this paragraph, the author writes, his parents were Hungarian Jews who lived in Budapest during the Second World War. In 1944, when his mother was pregnant with him, the Nazis took control of the city and the Russians were poised for a counterattack. His parents managed to get to a bombed-out hospital using fake identity papers and to take the baby back safely to the family hideout. But there was little food and Komlos cried incessantly. One relative told his mother to throw the baby outside since he wasn't going to make it anyway. This background information is used to provide some context for Komlos' interest in this topic, but it also serves as a reminder to the audience about how difficult life can be. These kinds of events impact our height, but mainly this information helps the audience connect to Komlos on an emotional level, which increases the chances that the audience will believe him. In this paragraph, I see the author appealing to logos and beginning to make a logical case about the height issue he explores. The author explains, biologists say that we achieve our stature in 3 spurts. The first in infancy, the second between the ages of 6 and 8, the last in adolescence. Any decent diet can send us sprouting at these ages, but take away any one of 45 or 50 essential nutrients and the body stops growing. Here, the author is building the foundation of his argument by presenting logical information about the connections between diet and growth. Finally, I see some appeals to ethos as well. The author provides the audience with clear evidence related to the credibility of his sources. He writes, Fogel, who won the Nobel Prize in Economics in 1993, is the man most responsible for Komlos's interest in height. In the fall of 1982, when Komlos was working on a PhD in economics at the University of Chicago, he had earlier earned a PhD in history there, Fogel gave a lecture on stature that Komlos attended. Here, as the author sets up his source information, he establishes clear credibility for that source information. As Fogel and Komlos are key sources of information in his argument, when he describes their background to the audience, it makes these sources more believable. The author appeals to ethos in order to help the audience believe his overall argument. I thought it was interesting to see all three ethical appeals so clearly at work here. Ultimately, they all come together to help a writer build a more persuasive argument.
Okay, are there any questions or comments around that? Were you able to see what he saw when he pulled out the appeals to logos, pathos, and ethos? No. That's a good one. That's a good one, Rebecca. Right. Did we all get that, or I don't know? I think I'm hoping that by now we'd be able to clearly see, and I want us to maybe saw logos and ethos, had to think about pathos. Remember when he started, like right at the beginning of the article, he painted the picture of this guy whose family was struggling and he almost died or something like that at the beginning. So that's the appeal.
She assigned us an article.
That's the appeal to pathos there, because he's basically showing us trying to make an emotional connection with this person. Here the parents managed to get to a bombed out hospital using fake ID papers and took the baby to safety. That painting, that picture is appealing to the pathos. I hope that's a bit clearer, Rebecca. Okay, and then finally, now I really want us to put our thinking caps on. We've done a few examples. We've seen someone do an example, and now I want us to take maybe 5 minutes and just look at, this is actually, this is a writing by one of your peers. So I'm not going to say who, but someone sent through a piece of writing, and I thought this is going to be very interesting for us to try to analyze together as a class or as a group. So let me just get that. It's a very short, it's just the introduction. She wrote an essay, and this is just an introduction of the essay. So yeah, I want us to take 5 minutes. It's a quick read. And then you will tell me where you see ethos, pathos, and logos, if you see it. That is, if you see it, where you see it, and what you think could be improved, where it maybe didn't come out too strongly. Okay. We are nearing. Struggling so much in my academic. Okay, I'm glad that's helping. And again, like I said, if you want more specific feedback on some of even your other modules. If it's a writing activity, you're welcome to just schedule the one-on-one consultation with me, and I will go through it sort of paragraph by paragraph with you. Okay, so here's just the piece of writing. Like I said, it's very short. We're going to do 5 minutes, read through it, see if you identify these 3 elements. If you don't, then see where do you think the student could have added something to appeal a bit better to one of these modes of persuasion, right? Sorry, let me just change this to. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me, I'm going to try to zoom in, but then I'm also going to maybe post it in the chat. Sorry, Michelle. I hope it's clear now. Okay, so I think we've all gotten a chance to read the text. It's not very long. So I see 2 responses from Rebecca and Nicole. Thank you so much. If anyone else wants to join us in this discussion, please feel free. You're so welcome. If you don't want to type, maybe just raise the hand and you can unmute your mic if you feel that you'd explain yourself a bit better than writing it out. So yes, Rebecca says that pathos is coming out very strong. She's the student has written a lot about the struggles of the community with the abuse that's going on. She's kind of talked about logos connecting crime to drugs, but needs a bit more ethos. Expert opinion would have been good. Great response there. Nicole says pathos, appealing to our need for safety, could have provided more credible sources. Right. Anine, you joined late. That's okay. Hopefully you can watch the replay of the session. And then Claire also speaks of poorly trained law enforcement, unemployment. Needs to be more facts surrounding these statements to verify accuracy. And so I feel ethos needs to be stronger, as well as logos, the use of evidence. Exactly. So I agree with all of you ladies. Thank you for your contributions. Exactly, that's it. We're seeing a lot of pathos. The student has painted a picture. We can clearly see what's happening. We can clearly see the needs and the struggles of the community. But like you all said now, the expert voice isn't coming so much out. The evidence isn't coming out a lot. And I want us to be mindful when you guys are writing your own essays that that expert opinion does come out, that logic, that reasoning does come out, right? One thing that I did highlight to the student is when she says that let me just highlight, substance abuse affects more than just the user and the dealer. It's responsible for many other South Africa's social problems. So I asked the student, but how did you come up to that conclusion? Because just because it makes sense in your head, in your mind, doesn't mean it makes sense in your reader's mind. Some people might not see the link between substance abuse and all these other issues. Some people may say, are you sure substance abuse is the reason for HIV/AIDS? Are you sure substance abuse is the reason for poverty? Isn't it something else? So at this point, a reader would start questioning what she has written here, right? So ethos needs to come in a lot stronger. Logos needs to come in a lot stronger. And I hope that as you guys write your own, pieces and your own essays, that you start thinking about these things as you're writing. Have I provided enough sources? Have I provided credible voices for the claims that I'm making? Have I provided enough evidence? That is the base of academic writing, right? It's not an opinion pieces. It's very different to what we write on social media. It's not about your opinions, not about just putting out statements out there and leaving it at that. We need to ask ourselves, will someone believe when I say drug abuse is the cause for all these other problems? What evidence do I have to back up what I'm saying? And that's what you need to remember with all your writing, really, all your academic writing, right? So thank you so much for really participating and giving yourself to this particular process. That brings us to the end of our session, but I'm glad that you guys are still with me because I wanted to chat about the question that we had about the assignment. So I know that, sure, let me just go back to it. It was Amy's question. I don't know if Amy's still with us, actually. That's a pity. So before everyone leaves, I just want to chat through this quickly. Let me just close all of that. Yes, so maybe I must ask, would you guys want us to discuss assignment 2? Because the last time I think, and you guys must correct me if I wrote something wrong down, but we did say that we must just move on. But would you guys like a session where we chat through the assignment? And would you want it to be before we delve into our unit breakdowns? Or should it be an additional session? Because then next week we can start with Unit 1 on Monday, and then maybe on Wednesday we can do a breakdown of the assignment. And remember, we're not going to be discussing answers in the session. It's just gonna, it's gonna be more of a question and answer and how we can find the right answers. Yeah, so I mean, it's due on Friday. So this is the thing. Yeah, if anyone wants to sort of do a retrospective session on it. Otherwise, then, I mean, Amy, the student asking the question is gone. So, okay, maybe she will schedule that one-on-one. I'm only seeing one reply from Nicole, and I want this to be a democratic process. So if no one else replies on this particular question, I'm going to assume we all agree with Nicole that we must just move on. We must just continue. What I will say is if you are struggling, and you want, of course, some before submission, please then just feel free to book the one-on-one consultation, or email CT and TUT. Email CT and TUT and I'll say that you want a one-on-one session with me, and then we can arrange that before submission. But I mean, submission is Friday, tomorrow's a public holiday. Yeah, it's a bit tight. Okay, so everyone agrees that we're going to move on. So for next week, we are going to start with Unit 1 breakdown. Like I said, I ask that you guys please read the whole unit if you haven't yet. Make notes, make comments, make questions so that we can go through it together. And hopefully, my hope really is that by the time it's exam time, we've gone through the whole study unit together, and everyone is familiar with all the content, and everyone has had an opportunity to engage with all the content, so that nothing is new for you guys come exam time. So, right, okay, perfect. So we'll start with Unit 1 next week, and we'll take it unit by unit. If we can't, for example, finish one unit, because I know some of the units are very long. If we can't finish one unit in a session, then we can just chat about maybe breaking that unit up into 2 sessions, maybe in the same week or in the next week. But we'll discuss that. We'll discuss that in the meantime. Okay, is everyone okay with that? Right, so before you guys pop out, I just want to put out the evaluation form. Are you guys happy with us chatting through the units next week? I'm sure you're already familiar with it because you would have now gone through your assignments, and of course you needed that to work through. But yeah, so okay, so I've posted the session evaluation. Please fill that out, and I'll see you guys next week with Unit 1 breakdown. Please do read the unit if you haven't, because it's going to be a very high-level overview of it. Thank you so much, Nicole, and thank you to everyone for joining us tonight. Enjoy your Heritage Day. Rest, finish up your assignment, and yeah, just have fun. I think the weather's going to be really good. So yeah, that's it for today. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next week. Bye.